first time that one of your campaigns went viral, what was your response and your team's reaction? And has it now become a goal of yours for all your campaigns moving forward?
Our first ever campaign will always probably be my favorite campaign. We're really surprised, but I guess surprised but not surprised at the same time. I think what surprised us was, I suppose, where the online conversation started, but I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I just mean like we so thoroughly enjoyed the work that we created ourselves. When we found Halo, the creative energy was in sync. We both had a hunger to do something different, to disrupt the industry in the space.
Today, we are joined by a very important client. I'm very sure that a lot of our audience has encountered their out-of-home campaigns with their smart, quirky, and effective creative comms and the strategic approach across the landscape, as well as owning the out-of-home conversations online and really showing how out-of-home can go viral. They are truly forerunners in leading in the out-of-home space, and it seems only fitting that we would have them join us on the first and only out-of-home podcast in South Africa. I'm very pleased and excited to welcome our VIP guest, Nichole Shub, the Chief Marketing Officer of Pineapple, joining us today on the podcast. Hi, Nichole, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Kirsty. Thanks so much. Also, what an introduction. Almost feel like running out of this room and hiding. But thank you. No, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to get into this conversation today. I really feel there's so much to talk about. I have never been so invested in a brand, watching and waiting to see what they're going to do next, as much as I'm invested in Pineapple, like particularly having the love and the passion I have for out of home and the type of work that you've been executing in the space. Like, I couldn't be more excited.
This is like every out of home person's dream to really sit down with you today, Nichole, and just unpack the brand that I think has made everybody more interested in out of home, even people who are not in the media industry. I think it really feels like Pineapple have just given everybody that like breath of fresh air from a creative perspective, from a media perspective, to actually just be like, wow, okay, these guys are pushing the envelope. So like, I've been counting the sleeps until this recording, basically. Similar to my Christmas countdown, I've been doing that for this episode.
No, that's very sweet. Thanks so much, guys. I think it's an absolute blessing to be here, to be talking about our billboards and to be talking about this brand. And I'm very grateful and yeah, just for where we are at the moment as a brand. And I think the success that we've achieved, and I suppose how we've been building this brand and how we continue to build this brand, and sort of the personality that we've managed to create with this, well, for this brand, because I think that that's helped us really leverage the spaces that we show up in. So yeah, very grateful to be having this conversation with you guys. So thank you.
Nichole, I think what you guys are able to do with your out of home, with your creative comms, and like really owning the out of home conversations online, as I was saying, like, really being a part of that and showcasing how out of home can go viral online. And that is what all brands and clients are wanting and wishing for. How can they take the out of home? How can they make it go viral online? How can they get audiences to engage with their out of home advertising? And you guys have been doing exceptionally well in this and really showcasing the effectiveness of the medium and how those two can come together with when it comes to online and out of home and taking out of home to your phone. But what I wanted to ask you is the first time that one of your campaigns went viral, what was your response and your team's reaction? And has it now become a goal of yours for all your campaigns moving forward?
It's such a good question. Our first ever campaign will always probably be my favorite campaign. I don't know if that's just because I really absolutely love the work, or whether it's because it was just our first. But I think that we're really surprised, but I guess surprised but not surprised at the same time. I think what surprised us was, I suppose, where the online conversation started, but I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I just mean like we so thoroughly enjoyed the work that we created ourselves. I mean, I'll never forget. So we work with an agency, Halo. I think just creatively we are so aligned. when we were looking for an agency to assist us, because I think we wanted to step into the out of home space, and we wanted to start with billboards because we thought that would be the best place to start. We love the fact that billboards are stationary. You can really start building some good brand recall there. And I don't know, when we found Halo, the creative energy was in sync. We both had a hunger to do something different to disrupt the industry in the space. Even though we do work for insurance, we actually ironically hate insurance, at least how it traditionally is run. And I think we really wanted to play off of that, and we really wanted to lean into that. And it was so great to find Dean and his agency who were hungry and keen to do that with us. We were sitting in a boardroom and we were like reviewing lines, and we were coming up with lines, and I don't know, we would just like cry laughing at like some of the lines like on the billboards. I mean, standout moment, one in particular. I don't know if you guys ever saw that billboard, but it was like, have you ever seen or have you seen our billboard in Hyde Park? And that billboard was in Santon, and we had a picture of the billboard in Hyde Park. Like we were literally, and vice versa. Like we were cry laughing at that, and like and we were just, and it was just such a fun campaign because it was literally like everybody has had a bad experience with insurance before, and everybody has somebody that they know that's had a bad experience with insurance. We've always wanted to build this brand that's incredibly self-aware, self-deprecating, loves to have a little bit of a laugh, loves to poke a little bit of fun at ourselves, and very gently also having a little go at the industry itself. And I don't know, like it was just so honest, and it was just so real, and so yeah, it was just so honest about ourselves. Because I mean, like, when I say self-deprecating, I mean at the time we knew nobody knew who we were. Yet here we were in a billboard, and we had a line. I think it was like, "Never heard of pineapple." Honestly, same. And yeah, we had a little go at the insurance space, which was like, what's left to say about insurance right at the top, and then nothing on the rest of the billboard. And to make your day worse, here's an insurance ad. I mean, we'll get into that a little bit later with our recent campaign. Yes, it can be dangerous when you're having a little laugh at your own lines in a boardroom and with the people around you, because there is invested interest in the brand. But I mean, I just think because it was so honest and so real, and really tapped into how people feel about insurance, I think that's what sort of got South Africa excited, if I can say that. And then I think the billboard that actually first broke on LinkedIn, I think that was the one that surprised us most. It was Drip, a shoewear brand. They literally were everywhere. Every second billboard in South Africa was yellow with the big shoe on it, the big iconic Drip shoe on it. And we thought, man, that would be so great. And it was literally, the next billboard is selling Drip. We're just selling insurance. Sorry. And I think and we specifically broke a little bit of RCI at the time, and we made the billboard yellow. I mean, yes, it is part of our brand, but yeah, so I think that was what people initially started talking about. And I guess that was surprising to see that was the billboard that got people talking initially. So context, we had 108 billboards specifically at the time, and each of those billboards had a unique line on all of them. And I think what happened after that is people realized, oh, wait, all of these billboards are different. And people started to, I suppose that was just like what got the conversation going. And then, slowly but surely people were like, oh man, did you see this billboard? Oh, had a chuckle at this billboard, and how relevant, stuck in traffic, saw this, and, couldn't help but to chuckle. And yeah, which is really cool. I think it's really cool that people can like have a laugh at the work that you've created.
You mentioned when you started answering the question that you were surprised but not surprised, right? I think nobody knows exactly that they're going to be going viral, but the way that you've unpacked how you got to that point, I think is so critical in that, one, you've highlighted the relationship with the creative agency. A lot of the times, a lot of the guests that we speak to, the focus is really on the relationship with the media agency, or if it's in-house, kind of how the internal team is managing the media. But the creative agency is having such a close working relationship, having such an invested, like a mutual goal of, we want to do things differently. We want to disrupt the category. How are we going to do this? And I think everybody can attest that you guys have really started that momentum of the wave that we're seeing. I never thought the insurance category would be the category that would get me the most excited, because traditionally it hasn't. And I think that Pineapple has actually changed that positioning for the category. There are some other brands doing some amazing work in that space, but from my perspective, I think that Pineapple has been the catalyst for everybody to get bolder, braver, dive in, and really see how can we make the out of home work for us harder, rather than just adding it on as the last line of the schedule and hoping something comes of it. You've touched on some of the copy lines. We've had some amazing guests join us on the podcast from a creative perspective. We've had Rowanna from Boundless Creative Agency, which do some fantastic work locally in South Africa. We've had Catherine Morgan join us from Ocean Outdoor, who heads up Ocean Labs in the UK. And we've discussed what role creative plays in out of home. How do you land that creative messaging? And there's a lot of talk around, things that stay with me from those episodes are, if you can land your out of home campaign on a billboard, your creative messaging is working. There's also been a lot of talk around landing it between 6 to 8 words, but I've never ever had somebody describe landing their campaign by, did you roll on the floor laughing? Were you cry laughing when you were coming up with the creative messaging? And obviously it depends on the campaign, but I just think that coupled with your relationship with the agency, and then were we rolling on the ground laughing? No, then that line doesn't make it. And I think no one has taken that approach to out of home. And I think that's why you see this viral uptick, that everyone's speaking about what Pineapple were doing. And like you mentioned, at the first time of the campaign that you guys launched, it was drip and pineapple, drip and pineapple. And then, like you said, for you guys to have jumped on that quickly, then people start to realize, hold on, all this messaging is unique. How have they done this? Why have they done this? And then that viral moment happens. And I think that's what ignited everybody to kind of be like, whoa, okay, hold on, this insurance brand are doing something different.
And can I tell you, I think we could not afford to not. So Halo at the time and Pineapple at the time, we were both tiny. And I think that we had to work closely with one another, because I think what one had, the other lacked, and vice versa. And I think that that's also why it really, really worked. And I also think what really, really helped us is to know exactly who we are and who we want to keep consistently showing up as. And I think the more you understand who you are from a personality perspective and a brand perspective, I think the more you can do that and try to consistently do that. And I say try because we haven't always gotten it right. I think hopefully we make up for it by having a laugh at ourselves and taking accountability for those moments where we don't always get it right.
Nichole, you've touched on it, and I think let's get straight into it. There's so much to unpack in this episode. I know Kirsty and I, when we were coming up for our list of proposed questions for this episode, it was like, how on earth are we going to get to everything? And we knew that, there's so much to cover. But let's chat about your most recent campaign at the moment. I think following the massive success of your previous campaign, where everybody was hungry for finding what was the next messaging that was landing, and your recent campaign, initially when it came out, I had people, chatting to me about it and saying like they've nailed it. I had other people saying, I'm not sure what's going on. And I think your guys' response from a brand perspective and acting quickly, the agility, the accountability, do you want to share some background of the campaign with us? What did it look like in the war room, if you want to call it that? How did it land? The pivot, I have like literally laughed out loud seeing some of the interviews of your team online, like on LinkedIn, on my phone, where they're discussing what they thought it was going to be like and then where it ended. And for me, I mean, it crossed my mind that I was like, if Pineapple have intentionally like almost had a campaign that didn't land in out of home, so that they could have launched this online, like the deep dive with asking the creatives, like, what happened? How did everyone feel about it? I was like, it's brilliant. So would love for you to just share some of that journey with us.
I wish I could tell you that it was intentional. It wasn't. There was no plan. I think, look, like it's so easy to just get into this creative bubble, and especially when you fall in love with like a concept, and you can so easily and visually see it. Because remember, when you are going through, I mean, our billboards are pure just copy on a billboard. And I think it's also so dependent on how you read it and, how it's delivered. And also, I think the more you tap into culture, because you want to tap into culture, but you also don't want to be too niche into culture, because that's when people might miss it. I mean, we got DMs, we were getting like DMs, people were asking in like our agents, like our online support agents, like, what does this mean? Like, and one of the billboards that got
Sorry.
some of the
That is so
the
funny.
most
Sorry,
questions was
Nichole.
no, no, really, it was no, really, really, it was. But I guess it's also cool if you think about it, because it's so nice to have people that like care and want to know so much so that they'll DM us and that they'll like, ask our online chat support agents, or like,
Yeah.
friends will be sending WhatsApps to be like, what does this mean? Or like,
That
um,
drives a call
our
to action if you think about it. Everyone's always like, did the
yeah,
billboards work? It's like, well, the call center was inundated asking the agents, can you not? I don't want insurance. I want to understand what is happening on the billboard.
just to circle back, I think you can get trapped in like a little bit of a creative bubble. And I think that's literally what happened. I mean, we were so knee deep in this campaign and in love with like the campaign, and like, I don't know, we were all like reading it in like a very, very specific way. Like some people were reading it like as like a sort of caveman iteration. Some of us were just like, reading it in like, almost like how if you were a teacher and like teaching English to like foreign speakers of other languages. What I will say is part of the campaign were some of the lines were fantastic, and I'll still stand by it. Like, I don't know, we had a little cheeky reference to a blue pill that I thought was absolutely fantastic. But I think it was like tire go soft, tire go hard, not blue pill, pineapple. I think also what, because we thought about this a lot. I think also it's so interesting because the people who got it instantly got it. And then there were people outside of that who didn't get it. And it kind of like made me think of, I wonder how the first knock knock joke was ever received. Just as an example, like, somebody's like, wait, I've got this, knock knock. And you're going to say, who is there? And then I'm going to say, so you know what I mean? I think maybe if all of the lines met a certain criteria, and like, I think, yeah, as I said, the one that had the most confusion was snapback cap, and like we didn't realize that like lots of South Africans didn't know what a snapback cap was, which was surprising in itself. It was so interesting because there were people where it was like, what do you mean you don't get it? It's so obvious. Like we made like a precious reference for like Schmeagol from Lord of the Rings, and like we made like a Liam Neeson like Taken reference, and we had all of these references, and I just think that those who got it immediately got it, and like there were
Yeah.
just some people, no matter how hard you tried to put the pieces together, just like did not compute.
At what point did you guys make the decision, as the chief marketing officer, what made you make the decision to like, okay, we're going to take accountability of this in our communication in the landscape and to our audiences, and we're going to now overlay, more humorous messaging to kind of say, oops, we didn't get it right this time. Advertising is hard. I've seen a couple of them, and kind of overlay that onto your billboards. Like, at what point were you like, okay, we need to actually own this and take that accountability as a brand?
I think, oh man, I'll never forget the day, because I mean, the mixed feedback was coming in thick and fast, and I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks after the campaign had gone live, and we were just like, wow, like this feedback really, really is quite mixed. But then also in it, we got quite excited. I know that that's a very, very strange thing to say, in a moment that feels like a crisis. We got excited because we're like, there's actually an opportunity here. And like, let's actually like lean into this, and let's take accountability for the fact that most people don't know what the heck is going on. Because I mean, like in hindsight, you have a look and you're like, okay, yeah, I can kind of see how people would have been confused by that. And like, and we were just like having like a little bit of a laugh, and like having a laugh at ourselves, especially because I don't know, it's like almost like the moment that we came out from the tunnel that we're all in, like, and being like, okay, whoa, like that actually happened, and we just thought hilarious. Like, let's go forward and let's make fun of ourselves and let's do it in a very, very pineapple way. And, we were prepping for a new campaign in any case. So we were like, this is the perfect time to do a little cheeky interim campaign. I think what's so fascinating is the amount of people who thought that we were intentionally trying to confuse people. And we intentionally had this little campaign like in the bag, ready to like whip out and like go forward with, is just like, no, it was definitely not planned. I mean, I think that's also kind of like the magic when it comes to pineapple. I mean, even with our first campaign, we had one billboard that literally kept getting stolen. It was so irritating. And I think it was like the third or fourth time that the billboard got stolen. We were like, you know what, screw it. We're just going to leave the cutout of the billboard that's been like stolen, and we're just going to like rent like one of those like pop-up movable like billboards. I'm going to say like, please stop stealing this billboard. Ironically, it's not insured. Like I just think we're like very opportunistic, and we're like always looking for
Yeah.
opportunities. And I think the nice thing is
I
we've got an
just love
incredibly dynamic team, and everybody's keen to like do things quickly and to get things over the line quickly and to strike whilst the iron is hot. And I think Halos feels the exact same way, which is why I think we work so well together. And I think that kind of energy and that kind of relationship equals magic.
Nalissa Media, your brand, their eyes, amplified with our out-of-home solutions. Get your brand to the people with Nalissa Media's dynamic out-of-home media solutions, tailored to fit your unique campaign needs. Whether you want to engage audiences on billboards, transit ads, or digital screens, we have the right platform for you. Elevate your brand visibility and impact with our innovative and cost-effective solutions.
Yeah, I think your guys' responsiveness to like changing to like landscape or environment circumstances or commenting on your own campaign so quickly has been part of, like you mentioned, that magic of what's kind of drawn people in, and really such a smart tactical play. I wanted to ask you a question around the strategic role of out of home from a pineapple like media ecosystem perspective, but specifically focused around out of home, is that we see a really strong focus around static or traditional out of home. And I think at the time of your first campaign, and we've seen this momentum having built over the past year or so, with a really strong commitment and focus on static or traditional out of home from a lot of brands locally and globally. Tom Goddard, who's the head of the World Out of Home organization, made a call to awake the sleeping giant of traditional out of home or classic out of home. And I think that we've seen a lot of brands come to market with a different focus around traditional. And I think you guys have done exceptionally well to be adaptive when doing static billboards versus digital out of home. Always comes to mind immediately when you think about being adaptive creative. You can change it 20 times a day. You can, change your messaging really quickly. Everybody's kind of immediate thought is to use digital out of home in that space. And I'd kind of like to ask a two-part question here. The first part is, why have you had the focus on classic or traditional out of home? And then what is your opinion on digital out of home and some of the ways that digital out of home can be used beneficially? But I'd love to just hear your opinion on the two different channels and how you guys have seen them work for your brand.
Sure. You guys are not going to like what I have to say about question number 2, but it's fine. We'll get
Get
there.
it out. We
I
can
think
handle it.
But I think, look, we love owning things, and we like having things over a long period of time. And I think that's why billboards, well, we've gravitated towards traditional billboards. I think the nice thing is, you're going to go to sleep tonight, it's going to be there tomorrow. You're going to drive past it about 10 or 15 times in the next 3 to 5 days. And I love that, the fact that you're never going to have a moment where you're potentially going to miss it because you're sharing a space with 9 to 10 other advertisers. And I just think that, especially if you've got a brand that has something funny to say or something thought provoking to say, like, I actually appreciate that. I love it when a brand does something different that makes me think. I think South Africans absolutely love humor. I mean, I think it's the reason why Nando's has seen so much success in the past. I just think like there's so many things that we can complain about in South Africa, but also, I don't know, South Africa has this like really, really unique ability to like really, really banter and like hilarious banter around like some of the hardships and the things that like the banter around like load shedding and water
Yeah.
outages and things like that. We've just got like such a fantastic sense of humor. And I think if you've got something great to say or something that is funny or makes people think or like it needs to be clever, I think I really appreciate it. And I appreciate seeing that kind of advertising and I want to see that kind of advertising. And I think that if you've got this static space and people are going to be driving past it, like entertain them, do something interesting to capture them and to like communicate with them. And I don't know, I think sometimes people just fall into this trap of like simplifying their billboards. And I don't know, where you don't have to think much in order to get it. Like I like to work a little bit harder for things. I find that when it does land, the reward is so much greater or sweeter. So yeah, so I think we really, really like the traditional space for that reason. We love the fact that we have this platform and this opportunity to speak to these people every single day. We know that traffic sucks. We know that driving can sometimes suck too, especially in South Africa, can with potholes and other unique things on the road. So I think it's like so nice to be able to, okay, you're sitting in traffic, you have a little look to the right. Oh man, what a great joke. Didn't even have to go onto social media for that. And then you can keep going back. And I think also if you start doing something unique where you do have little pockets of like different messages for people to like surprise and delight because they know, okay, maybe the next one's going to be different to this one
Yeah.
and keep that pattern going. I think it creates like a little bit more excitement on top of, the fact that that was funny, Just leading into the conversation about digital billboards. I think like sometimes there's not enough time to actually absorb what you actually just like digested and then it's gone. I don't know if you guys have ever had that moment where like you'll see something interesting on a digital billboard, but then it goes and you're like, what was that brand or what was that saying? And then like the robot turns green and then you end up missing it. And then, the likelihood of you then going and seeing that very same advert for that brand again is like less likely. And then more onto the controversial side of things with digital. I'm not a fan at all. Um, I think it has its space, and I think it can be great for brands. And I think what's been really, really nice is we've got really, really good relationships with all of our billboard suppliers, and they sometimes are like, "Hey guys, we've got a digital placement that we'd love to give you guys." So I think from an added value perspective, like hell yeah. Like, thanks so much. Like, we'll take it. But I think in terms of buying it ourselves, I just think there's nothing that upsets me more. I mean, ironically, my husband and I were driving home from paddle one evening, and it was so overwhelming. We were literally on the highway. It was nighttime. This billboard's flashing red. This billboard's flashing like blue, and like this billboard's like flashing green. I don't know. I just think that instead of those billboards welcoming you in, because there is motion and movement and like flashing lights and things like that, I think that they can be quite overwhelming. And as I said, I'm not a fan of sharing my space with 8 to 9 other brands. I think we want you to, if you're at a robot, to read that billboard 10 or 20 different times, take a photo if they need to, so that they can have a look at it later on or when they park somewhere else, that they can digest it and absorb it and actually understand it. I want them to go the next day and the following day and do the exact same thing.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just wanted to touch on a couple of points. You shared so much there that I need my notepad and my pen because I want to write down all the different things to talk
Sorry.
about. Funny enough, just in a recent episode that we've had, we actually spoke about the brightness of screens and the bylaws around that, because I've had a lot of family members and friends, contact me and say, can you ask those guys to turn down the brightness of the screen on this road or in that area? And it really can be quite distracting, but there are bylaws around it dependent on the different municipalities and, dependent on the size of the screen, how bright they need to be. And over and above that, if we look at like digital out of home in Western Cape, a lot of the main highways and a lot of the digital out of home in Western Cape actually doesn't allow any animation within their municipality. So there is laws around this to actually reduce distracting drivers, but a lot of those bylaws aren't always enforced. So that does cause a lot of issues. And then I think on the other piece that you spoke about with regards to digital out of home effectiveness, I think I can tap it into that is, it is one client in a loop, and I can understand, your strategic approach of really owning that static asset, really being always on. But what I found quite interesting is that, one of the reasons people use digital out of home, and Liv had spoken to this early on, one of the reasons brands use digital out of home is that they can have multiple creative messaging. And you flipped that on its head when you said we can still do a whole lot of different creative copies across a whole lot of different billboards across the landscape in a static environment. So, and I think that's also what created a lot of talk within the industry, is how you guys have done that on a static versus, a lot of people moving towards digital out of home for that, and for its ability to be able to do that with obviously a lower production cost. But what I do think is that it's horrible to do exactly what you said, is you're in that experience, you see an incredible ad, you saw the end of it, and you don't know, what the brand was. And I think that's where those key creative techniques with regards to how you advertise on digital out of home. Don't just put your TVC there. Make sure your logo is on throughout the ad so people actually know which brand it's for. But not only that, is like, it is so dynamic, and how do you tap into that dynamic abilities of tying it back to, a certain trigger, or, social feeds or social posting, and really bringing in that innovative, dynamic, strategic approach to the digital out of home. So I think it's got its point and its purpose in the landscape. But I
Yeah, of
love how
course.
you have touched on, really Pineapple, really owning that always on approach of always communicating to your audiences, and really building on what is one of the greatest things about the classic static out of home, and really taking that on, but also flipping it on its head to say, like, we've done multiple creative messaging across the landscape, across many billboards, and you've seen how effective that is in the static space.
I definitely do see the advantages of and why people are so attracted to digital advertising. And I think it does speak to that speed in which that you can literally just switch it off. Like if a campaign is bad or there's some controversy, you can literally just switch it off. But and I suppose like turning something around, getting it live the next day. But I don't know, look, the static space with multiple creatives speaking to different messages and things like that, and doing frequent rollouts in the above the line space is definitely more difficult and
Yeah.
time consuming, but it's definitely worthwhile. Because as I said, like I think what's quite nice is, I mean, I'm that person, and I don't know if I'm that person because I'm in advertising, but I like to think that even before I got into that advertising space, I was that person. If I saw something really interesting, even if I missed it the first time round, like best believe the next day, I'm like, this is coming up, be focused, look to the right and actually see what's going on there, and like, take it in and look for who the brand is. And I'll be asking everyone else if they've seen something, or trying to take a photo of it so that I can ask people that I know, like, hey, have you seen this? Or like, do you know who this is? Or whatever the case might be. And I think that that's what you stand to gain if you don't do digital advertising, because okay, cool, I missed it the first time, but I'm actually driving past there again this afternoon. I'm going to see who it is. Because I think what was so funny is we got, like, with our first campaign specifically, there were a lot of people who came for us, like marketing experts, who came for us saying, like, your branding is so small. Like, like it was so difficult to see like pineapple.co.za in the corner. And then,
Yeah.
and it was so interesting to, like, it was almost like, let's grab some popcorn and like, let's see these people hash it out for themselves in the comments,
Yeah.
because there are other people that were like, but you drive past the billboard, like, every day, like, just look for it again, you don't
Yeah.
need to, why must the whole billboard be the logo, and it's actually quite funny because we had that debate. Like, we even quoted he's actually our MD and one of the co-founders, Matt. And in every meeting, can we make the logo bigger? Can we make the logo bigger? Can we make the logo bigger? And we actually had this like obnoxious billboard, like, as an ode to Matt, where like the logo was so large that it was like cut off like in the frame of like the billboard, and like overlapping everything, which I thought like tied into that. And it was so great because when people were having that argument, we're like, just gonna send you this billboard real quick, like, but
And
but
it's
that's
such
the
a
thing. I
creative
think
agency meme, that, Nichole. Sorry. It's such a creative meme. The logo bigger. Like, how many times I've seen that on like marketing pages on Instagram. And I always have such a good laugh because that's always what the feedback is.
So the two things I want to add here is that, you've added how the approach is so intentional, right? With what you guys are doing in out of home and with your campaign messaging. And any campaign really for me that stands out are the ones that took a bit longer to execute, the ones that were a little bit harder, like you say, to do 180 odd different pieces of creative messaging and make sure that every single one of them is placed on the exact billboard that you meant to, is a very labor intensive way of using the out of home channel. Whereas it would be much easier to have one creator that went onto 100 billboards, out of home, done, tick, move on to the next channel. So I think that there is this intentional approach and it's worth it, although it does take extra time, but people notice it. And that's part of what the magic that you guys have tapped into is. And from a digital out of home perspective, I think the way that I could see that intentionality, if there's such a word, crossing over
Yeah.
into the digital out of home space, because there are obviously pros and cons for the digital out of home channel, but what kind of I could see Pineapple activating in that space is almost tactically dominating an entire screen for a day, a week, a few days, or whatever it is, and using the loop to do the messaging, like the cheeky, smart messaging we're expecting from Pineapple, in a very different way, but more because you're doing such a strong brand building and tactical execution on the classic or the traditional out of home. Translating that into digital, I don't think booking as many digital sites as you can will do the trick, or I don't think saying like, hey, Fourways Mall, or hey, hey, Nelson Mandela Square, this is our messaging, is enough. We want more from Pineapple. That I would love to see like a digital out of home takeover type execution where the screen is dominated and it's completely engaging. You know, we've seen Safaricom have done a bantering billboard in Kenya where you kind of have a spotter. Kirsty's worked on campaigns in her past where they've done, you know, for Mondelez and for the launch of 5-Star Chocolate. We have a spotter saying, hey, you in the red dress, or hey, you in the blue car. I think Pineapple would have its own version of that to kind of use the digital out of home channel in a really, really tactical way, in bursts almost, is the way that I could maybe see it working. But I also completely understand and respect the reasons that you guys have lent into some of the other out of home channels.
It might or might not be in the pipeline, but
Ah,
one thing that I will just say is it's the costing in that space is unreal. Like
yeah,
in a sense of you would think that because you share a slot with, you
you
know,
think,
9 other advertisers that it would be cheaper, but
yeah.
it's not. So I think we're still trying to find a more cost-effective way to do
Yeah.
it, because I think we've got a couple of ideas in terms of how we would like to tackle that space.
What's great, Nichole, is that you've used static for one of its greatest abilities is to build that long standing brand association. And I think, you know, you've seen that benefit, but you've also now taken it to the level of being in conversation with your audiences, you know, taking it from the out of home offline space into the online space, and now having those conversations about your billboards with your audiences. And I think, you know, you've really built that brand association and that brand equity. And that's what one of the biggest benefits are of static out of home, and actually out of home as a medium, but static out of home
Yeah.
specifically. And I think now as an evolution of adding in, how do you tackle digital out of home in a tactical way, digital place-based networks in a very tactical way, but that is still aligned to your brand in an engaging way with your audience. I think it's going to be amazing to see, and I cannot wait to see what you guys do next. And I think this leads me to one of our closing questions for today. And I really wish this episode was not coming to an end. I wish we were sitting here for another 3 hours, because I have been 100% invested. I could go put the kettle on and we could continue this chat. Um,
Yeah, agreed.
But I would just like to ask you, you know, what is something that is exciting you the most when it comes to the out of home landscape in South Africa? It would be so interesting to hear your perspective, you know, being a big player and a forerunner in this out of home space in the industry. I'd really love to hear, like, what do you think is quite exciting in the space at the moment? What have you seen? And you know, what's quite interesting is that when we pose this a similar question like this to a lot of our guests before, and even some of our other client guests, when we ask them what is exciting you the most, or what campaigns can you refer to, the amount of times that pineapple has come up in nearly, I don't know if
Oh.
Liv can correct me, how episodes as the answer.
Almost every episode, yeah.
So to you now, finally, I get to ask you the question, Nichole. What is exciting you in the landscape? Is there any campaigns that have stood out for you? Is there any new formats? Is there any way that people are using certain media? I think that's my first question is what's exciting you? And then I'd just like to quickly add in another question is what would your advice be to players that want to kind of take a bit more ownership in the out of home space for brands that are either entering the space and out of home and not really sure what to do? What would your like top maybe three lines of advice be there?
Thank you. And also blessed. Like that's so lovely to hear. As I say, I sit here very humbly just hearing all of this and just very appreciative. I think something that's like really exciting for me in the space at the moment is I love that like I don't know, it just feels like the work is getting wittier. And it just feels like the work is smarter. It feels like the work is wittier. And also, I'm so passionate when it comes to copywriting. I think it is literally the most underrated form of creativity in the advertising space. And I really, really love to see how copywriting is finally getting the credit and the crown that it deserves in the space. I've noticed so many brands that are resorting to putting forward copy instead of like, stock imagery and cheesy imagery and all of that type of thing. So it's been so nice to actually see what brands have to say. And I don't know, I think it's a very confident thing to say it with your chest where you've got nothing else to support you, no visuals or anything like that. And
Yeah.
it's been so nice to also see like um the rivalry that's also starting to like emerge and like I don't know, it just feels like people are waking up and are like wanting to have a little bit more fun and are wanting to have a little bit of a poke and a jab. And I just think like there's something so nice when that does happen because it keeps you on your toes. So when that is happening, or if you're in the firing line and you are receiving shots, it's kind of like, okay, damn, like, can't just kick back. Not to say that we do kick back, but I mean, like, it almost, I don't know, it refocuses you. And I also think it's so nice to be able to have that fun. And I love the fact that like the walls are coming down in terms of being able to have that sort of like cheeky back and forth between brands. And having a go at each other a little bit, and I don't know, I love it when our name comes up in that firing line, like even directly or indirectly, or people will be like, these guys are 100% talking about you. I don't know, it keeps you on your toes in it, and I don't know, I think that's how people get better in the space. I think how do you sharpen each other if you don't have a cheeky moment amongst each other like every now and then.
And out of
So
home's
I've really,
great
really
for
been
that.
enjoying that. I think at the end of the day, like what you need to remember as well is like, you know, there's nothing wrong with being part of a conversation, even if that conversation wasn't started by you. In fact, what a blessing.
Yeah.
It's like free PR for you, and like, I don't know, I think it's pretty cool.
It's so great that you said it's so great to be a part of a conversation, even if you're not the person who started it. I thought that was really, really
Yeah, I
fantastic.
love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I think it's such a good point, Kirst. And Nichole, you've nailed it really, you've landed it really well. Is that I remember one of your campaigns, Marmite had jumped on because of the black and the yellow, kind of the brands, your black and yellow and their black and yellow. And for me, that was like, whoa, Marmite came out of nowhere. They've got nothing to do with the insurance category, but they were so quick to jump on to, like you say, like the quirkiness or the funness of a campaign that they didn't necessarily start the conversation, but like, how can you be involved? And I think that's such a great approach to kind of view the market, like the brand messaging and the marketing that's happening in the industry.
Just to add to that, I mean, like, the cool thing about that whole Marmite thing is, I mean, like, these guys, like, came out of nowhere. Like, I love that, and, like,
Yeah.
what a compliment. Like, what an awesome way to, like, get more legs. I mean, like, the online conversation that we saw was, like, who did it first? Was it Marmite or Pineapple? And, like, do you know what I mean? And, like, what a great moment just to sit back and be like, dope. Like, let the conversation continue and enjoy.
Yeah.
And I do think that there are things that we all share, and there are going to be moments in everybody's billboards or digital or social media. And I think like tuck into it, like like there'll be certain people that will know that we did it first, and then there'll be other people who didn't know that we did that work that will now know that we've done work like that through Marmite. Like, fantastic. What a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's a fantastic place for us to end the episode. I don't really want to say fantastic and end the episode in the same sentence because I really think that there is so much more we could have discussed. But it has really just been great to sit down with you. I think the more we've spoken, and we've had a few kind of calls before the session and got to know you, but the more we've spoken, I really feel like there's so much part of your personality actually threaded through like almost every part of your creative messaging, every part of like in all the billboards. I think it's really like I'm starting to see your very intentional, very strategic, very specific approach to marketing and media is actually living out in the billboard sites that we're seeing and in your creative messaging and market. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been absolutely amazing sitting down with you today.
You guys are the best. Thank you so much for having me. And again, like, what a privilege to be talking about pineapple. Like, unreal.
Thank you so much for joining us, Nichole. And thank you, Liv. Guys, that was a fantastic conversation. Thanks for joining us today to go beyond the billboard. Subscribe to our podcast to ensure you don't miss out on our exciting content.
Join us again to go beyond the billboard.
1, 2,